Disperse my doubts, my clouded feelings, chased away my darkest pain. Inside I feel my spirit rising, emotions mended by a woman's touch. A new future on my horizon. I'll never thank you too much. Through the heartache and the pain, you made my gray skies blue again. And after all that I've been through, I believe in you. I close my eyes as if I'm dreaming.
Deanna, you're mute.
This this is something I just said to somebody today. I was talking with Danny and I was like, I have a problem with this sometimes. Okay, let's try this again. I was talking, thank you, Frankie. All right. Again, you are in the Laughter After Trauma show. My name is Deanna. I am a speaker, educator, and coach who likes to bring light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. So I believe that we all have the magic inside of us to heal. What brought me to this is I'm a thriver after intimate partner violence. And my journey led me to coaching and to bringing hope and connection to others. And so that's what we do here on this show called the Laughter After Trauma. We share our stories. We show you that if we can, you can. And today's guest is no different than any guest that I've had on here. She has had her fair share of things, and she is going to talk to us about how she came to where she is now, which is what she calls herself a joy detective and a happiness consultant. So I'm going to invite Ashley up. The way this is going to work in the show, just as little notes on the show. We're going to chat, and Ashley's going to share her story with us. And then once she's finished sharing her story, we'll allow people to come up and ask questions or join in to the show. Something else that I want to bring up about Ashley is that she's also an author. She is the author of a book called A Beautiful Morning, How a Morning Ritual Can Change Your Life. I think I said that right, but I know it's a beautiful morning. I've read the book a couple of times. She's got it really laid out well so that you can not only understand why this ritual is good, but also how you can apply it different ways because everybody's morning looks different. So you don't have to be the early bird that catches the worm, which is not me. So, okay. With all of that being said, I'm going to invite Ashley up to video so we can get started and you guys can get to know her. So let's see if this all works. We were in the green room and we were working. All right, there she is. Hey, Ashley. Oh, another fun fact is that Ashley and I did go to high school together. Yes, I can hear you.
Cool.
Okay, yeah, there you go. I can hear you. Okay, so Ashley, before we get started, I'd like to introduce yourself, and then we're going to do a little icebreaker of this or that, and then we're going to get into your story. So just introduce yourself, where you live, who are you? Give us a little background.
Yeah. So my name's Ashley Brown. I live in Florida now, but I grew up in New Orleans. Like Deanna said, we went to high school together. And I am a writer and, like she said, a joy detective and a happiness consultant. And just briefly, what that means is as a joy detective, I look for ways to be happier every day. And that's not just, in the amazing times, but that's also in the ordinary moments as well. And as a happiness consultant, then I help other people, try to be happier in their daily lives as well. And I wrote a book about morning rituals, and I blog on my website, and I also do freelance work as well.
I love it. So lots of writing. So that's cool. And I think the freelance right now you're writing what is a little bit about travel, right? I bet you that's a happy place for you.
Yeah, right now I'm working on a blog, which is fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It seems like we have like a little bit of a delay, so I don't know if you're noticing that.
Yeah, your video is actually totally frozen on you, just
Oh,
sitting
it
here.
is. Okay. Let me see.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right.
Technology.
Is it I know, right? All right. How is it now? Am I good? I'm just
Still
wondering if
frozen
it's
on me.
me.
I don't know if anybody else is having the same.
All right, can you clap, Frankie? You'll let me know. Clap if you can hear us both and see us both. Okay. All right. All right. Well, somewhere somehow it's working for our audience. That's good. So, Ashley, why don't you, before we get
Just
into
imagine your
this,
face.
it's weird because I can see me and you, so I don't know. I don't know what's happening over there. But before we get into everything, can you tell us a little bit about your this or that? So I'm going to ask you like two, maybe three questions, because I think that this is something that happens to let people know a little bit about you that they'll decide if they can relate to you on that level, right? So the first one I'm going to ask you is coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, definitely.
Co- Okay. All right. The second one is Um, so you live in Florida, so this is going to be, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Beach or mountain?
Beach. You know,
Yeah.
mountains are cool, but my happy place is the beach.
Yeah. So it's funny because I have some people who live up north and you ask them and because they're in the mountains, they're like beach. But then some people up there are also like, nope, mountains. That's why I live here, you know? So you never know. All right. And then the last one I'm going to ask you because you are a writer, books in hand or audiobooks?
Books in hand, I really like flipping and holding something, and I've tried to read on a screen, but it's just not the same experience. So I've got to have an actual book, even though it's so much easier to do a Kindle or something.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but even when I listen to books, I still have to have the actual book as well. I like to mark in it and do all the things, you know. Okay. So
Yeah, yeah.
your story, you have lots of stories. We probably could have three shows with some of the things that we chatted about, but I want you to get into your story and kind of how it started and the progression to bring you to being a joy detective because I know that kind of started a while back and it's been a little bit of a journey. So tell us about that. How did you get here?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's been, probably, I'd say almost 20 years that I've been on this path. And, what's happened is that um, in 2004, I was pregnant and we were living here in Florida. And we had a Category 4 storm, hurricane hit. And we were here because it wasn't supposed to hit here. It took a last minute jog and it was really scary, right? It was terrifying to live through it. But in the middle of the storm, this giant oak tree that was in our front yard fell into our house and through our roof, and that was extremely terrifying. And I'm 8 months pregnant, and we've got all our stuff in the house. Of course, no power, no nothing, and it blew all night long. And the next day, there's no power in the entire region. There's trees down everywhere. There's all this damage. Our home has incredible amounts of damage. Right at the moment when you're nesting and creating the house and getting it ready for the baby, we have to evacuate. It takes weeks for the power to come back on. It takes weeks to be able to get back in the house. It takes even longer to get all of the repairs done. And so that was stressful. And then when I was in labor, my plan, because I have a plan, I'm a plan person. I make lists, I figure everything out. My plan was to have a natural delivery. But after 13 hours of labor, I ended up having to have an emergency C-section. So that was, completely not the plan. And it was traumatic because I'd never had surgery before, much less that sort of thing. I was already sort of, I was hormonal and whatever. And afterwards, I just really had a hard time recovering. Physically it was difficult and mentally it was difficult. And I became very anxious. And I'd not really been an anxious person before. I'd always considered myself to be a really strong person. And I really had a lot of difficulty coming back from sort of those two kind of back to back traumas. And then having this newborn to take care of, I was really um, anxious and fearful, and I was afraid to be alone with them because I was afraid something would happen that I couldn't handle, and then I was afraid to leave them with anybody else because I was afraid something would happen, and it was just really unpleasant. And I realized, that I pretty much was just having postpartum depression. So I went to therapy and got a lot of help with that, and managed to get back on a somewhat of an even keel. But for most of the early childhood years, I was just really consumed with being a good mom and handling everything and managing it and looking out for any sort of potential problem and averting disaster before it happened. I was just super vigilant, hyper vigilant, and it was a little much. Um, and so, I was a perfectionist, and I was not able to manage the chaos and unpredictability and all of that of parenthood and everything. It was just really a difficult time. So, you know,
Most people, I'm sorry, Ashley, we have a little bit of delay, but I wanted to pause you for a second because I don't think that most people recognize how how extreme postpartum depression, which is what it's called, but I don't know. I think it's a little bit more than that. But I don't think that most people understand how deep that can go
mhm,
and how much of a struggle that can be. I know I dealt with it only a little bit after my second. My sister had really a big struggle with that. And like you said, you're so consumed by making sure you're doing the right things to keep your child safe
mhm,
that it makes it really difficult for you to give any care for yourself. And
yeah,
then on top of that, you're dealing with this hormonal and depressive state, and it's on top of it. So it is a lot. And I did deal with the similar thing. I didn't realize you went through an emergency section, but yeah, I did the same thing. Plan to
yeah,
go natural, have the section, get an epidural. His heart rate's dropping. It's so much. It's a lot. It is a lot.
yeah. I
So.
mean, it's terrifying, and I guess in a way too, I felt almost like I had put my child at risk twice.
Mhm,
First by being in the house during a hurricane, because in retrospect, it was really stupid. Even though it wasn't supposed to hit us, we probably should have left town anyway. And then having the C section, which again, not my fault, not in my control, but again, it felt like my fault because it was my body, right? And I felt like
mhm,
I had failed off the bat. Like I was a terrible mom just to begin with because of those things. So it was like I was making up for it the whole rest of the
mhm,
time,
mhm.
which is a skewed way of thinking, but hormones they're crazy things, right? I mean, they will mess you up.
Yes, and now we're in another phase of that. At least I am. And I'm
Yes.
like, I'm not a happy camper with the hormones right now.
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. Well, it really does. And people don't realize, and people talk about PMS and they joke about it or whatever, but they don't realize how much your hormones affect your mood. It's chemicals in your body. I mean, it's just like some of the stuff that I'll talk about later about how to be happy. The reason it makes you happy is because it boosts serotonin, which is a chemical in your body. I mean, it's like those things affect how you are, and they can make you anxious, and they can make you happy, and they can make you depressed, and all those sorts of things. So yeah.
Yeah. So it gets all off kilter. So you find yourself in this place where you kind of, maybe are getting by on the surface, right? And
Hmm.
things are getting done and you're taking care of your kid and you're doing the things, but tell us how things moved from there because I know sometimes that is like treading water.
hmm And it was, I was doing that, and I managed everything really well. And, I was working, I was doing freelance work, everything was fine. But about midway through, like, when he was around, 9 or 10, and I didn't have to be as involved all the time, when they start to get a little bit of independence, then I was like, all of a sudden, it kind of dawned on me. I was like, boy, you know what? I am really not very happy. It was like you don't even notice while you're in it, right? But
Because
after
you're
that, I was
so
like, oh,
consumed. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
hmm hmm And so I started to really actively, because before all of this, I was a very happy person. I'm naturally optimistic. I'm always looking for fun things to do, and a lot of that had fallen by the wayside. I wasn't spending time with friends. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't doing the things that I love to do. I was barely able to read, which is like my top favorite thing to do, because I didn't have the time, or I wasn't giving myself the time. So I started trying to do that more, to put myself a little, more first, even though I still felt a lot of guilt about doing that, because to me, a good mom always puts their child first at the time. That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized, I'm not good to anybody if I'm not happy, if I'm grumpy and irritable, and that's not a great way to be as a mom. So I really started going deep into. I read a bunch of books. I took courses. I, did all these different things, tried all these different techniques, and I would find little things. I'd find something here and I'd implement it, and I'd find something here and I'd implement it, and I got better and better. And then one day in the summer, I think it was 2015 or 2016, I was looking for summer camps for my child. And I was like, man, I want to go to summer camp. Like that was, I only got to go once as a kid, but it was so much fun. And I thought they should have like grown up women summer camps. And so I Googled it, and I actually found a place in Texas that was in the fall, but it was essentially that. It was a week long creative camp for women. It's called Lucky Star. It's in Hunt, Texas. It's the most amazing thing ever, by the way, if anybody's interested in it. But I found that, and it took me like a couple of weeks to even get up the nerve to broach it with my husband, who is extremely supportive and was always like, go do this, go do whatever you want, I got it, had no trouble with it whatsoever. But I was feeling like, this is such a huge ask. Like, this is so selfish. I can't believe I'm going to spend this time and this money on myself on something totally frivolous. But I did, because I really wanted to go. And of course, he said it was fine. And so I set it up, and I was really excited. But I was not able to tell anybody else what it really was, because I felt like it was just too frivolous to tell anybody. So everybody else, my mom, my friends, everybody, I told them it was a work conference. Because
Yeah.
it was like, I have to go. It's work.
Right. So there is this level, right? So there's this level of worrying about what the external judgment's going to be when you invest in yourself and you do it and you feel like, I'm abandoning my family to do this. And and I'm so glad that your husband
Right.
understood that. Like, I'm so glad that he understood that that's not what was happening, and he knew it's something that you needed, and it was something that would fill you
hmm
up, and he probably saw the struggles. I'm sure he felt the struggles. And
hmm
so
Oh
I'm
yeah.
so glad that at least he was behind you on that, so that you felt like, well, I'm going to do it. Even if I can't tell anybody, I'm going to do it. Because I think when
Yeah.
we talked a little bit
Yeah.
beforehand about um, ways that you would sometimes kind of, and we all do this, cope with episodes or times where you're down, you're blue, whatever, and you would turn to things like TV or wine or, vacations or things like that, where once you have a kid, sometimes those options, even if they're legitimate options, maybe they're not crutches, maybe they're not escapes as far as using them inappropriately. Sometimes it is nice to just sit down and Netflix and chill and eat your popcorn and drink your wine and watch The Bachelor.
hmm
I don't know who I'm talking about, but sometimes those little guilty pleasures, right? I'm talking about me because just so people know that I'm not talking about you. Okay. But sometimes those sometimes those guilty pleasures are the things that give us a little bit of release and a little bit of relaxation, and then we move to the next thing and it's fine. But then when you have a kid, some of those things you really can't do. And so being able to take time like you did, just like you're
Mhm.
talking about at this camp, had to be so, like, I'm just picturing it going, God, summer camp for grown-ups, that sounds amazing. So tell us how things went from there, because I'm so glad that you were able to tap into that.
Yeah. So doing that, it was almost like it really kind of opened a little bit of a door for me. And when I got there, of course, it was a whole bunch of women who were doing the exact same thing, who were all just kind of like escaping from their lives a little bit. And the vast majority of us felt a little guilty, felt a little bit like we were, on the lam or something. But we also were just craving that time for ourselves and that restorative nature of being in community, having fun, being taken care of, because we didn't have to make the meals, we didn't have to do any cleaning, we were just there to have fun. And, fun gets a bad rap. People are like, oh, you got to work, you blah, blah, blah. But fun is really vital. It's really important. We think about how a kid learns, a baby learns, they learn by playing. And when we get to be grown-ups, we don't play anymore. So that was really wonderful for me and kind of got me a little bit further along the path. It was almost like a huge leap, from where I had been. And then coming home and realizing I did that. I went away for a week. The world didn't end. Everybody was fine and it was fine. And I thought I was going to be a one-time thing, but I ended up loving it so much. I was like, I really want to go back. And my husband's like, no problem. So I go back every year now.
Oh,
And,
nice.
it just is one of the things that I do now. And that is a huge difference as well. Um, but so I kept expanding my comfort zone with doing those types of things. And then one of the things I realized when I was trying to sort of look at my whole day and look at the way I felt just in normal weeks, because it's super easy to be happy when you're going on vacation or you're going to go do something fun. But in the daily routine, in your daily life, it's not so easy to always be happy, right? And I realized that I was still grumpy and irritable quite a lot. And so one of the things that I decided to do was change up how I started my day. And I started doing a morning routine where I would get up, and before I took care of anybody else, before I made breakfast for my child or before I started doing work or anything, I just took some time for myself. And that again felt a little selfish, because I was like, oh, I need to get right up and get going. But it was really necessary. And it started with just doing some stretches in bed and then doing a little bit of journaling. And then over time, I started waking up a little bit earlier to give myself more time for it because I really enjoyed it. And so I get on the floor and I do some yoga stretches and I do a little bit of meditation. And then I would go and I would take my coffee and I would take it in the backyard and I would drink it in the sun instead of like sitting there on my phone, like checking emails and texts and getting sucked into the day like that. And it just made a huge difference in how I felt and made a huge difference in my daily level of happiness. And so that was what led me to write the book about it because it was such a big deal for me.
Yeah, and just as a side note, because I know you have some other things you want to talk about, but as a side note, the impact on the way that you start your day and how that affects the whole rest of your day, I think is important. I think people, again, something that people can have as a simple tool in their toolbox. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it's just get up when you go to the bathroom, look at yourself in the mirror. Mel Robbins does a high five, right? But go get up, look at yourself in the mirror, and give yourself a high five and say, I love you. You're gorgeous. It's going to be a great day. Today's our day, whatever.
Mhm.
Because that type of just opening up your mentality and mindset to that first thing in the morning is going to frame the way you kind of see everything all day. And I think that's one of the things I learned
Yeah.
probably first from your book, you know, because I think that morning rituals have that kind of impact. That's, I mean, am I right
Hmm.
here?
It really does. I mean, mhm. What'd you say?
I just said, am I right here? We have just a little bit of a delay, so I don't know what's
Oh,
happening
yeah.
here. Yeah,
Everything was fine when we were in the green room and nobody was watching.
right. Isn't that the way it goes? But that's okay. Go ahead and continue your story
It
from
is.
there. So you wrote the book, and that was
Okay.
something that you kind
Yes.
of worked on.
Hmm. Yeah, that was really great, and I spent a lot of time, creating that and getting that out there, and continuing to sort of fine tune my morning ritual and add things and subtract things and keep it fresh. And then I did a little bit of teaching classes about that and that sort of thing. And then the pandemic happened, and I was really grateful that I had created that practice because especially in the early days, we forget now because we're so used to it, but those early days were so stressful. We had no idea what was happening. My husband is also self-employed. We were like, are we even going to be able to work? What's going to happen? We just really were totally at sea, and it was a ton of uncertainty. And so having that thing that I knew I was doing every day, I wake up in the morning and I would do that practice, and it would help me get calm. It would help me center myself, and it really helped me kind of make it through those first days, especially in a healthier way, probably than I would have if I had not had that practice. So that was really great. And then the other way that it really helped is that last summer, I had a really difficult time, probably the worst time ever of my life, when my dad, who lived here and who I was really close to, I'm an only child, uh, and he unexpectedly passed away. And as an only child, I was the only person who was in charge. There weren't any other relatives at all either. And so I had to handle all of the arrangements. I had to, pack up all of his things and get out of his house that he was renting, and, get rid of the business he was running, and just all these things. It was a ton of work, and I was completely devastated and overwhelmed, and it was just really difficult. It was hard to make it through every day. It was just really I can't overstate how tough the time was. Uh, and but I had that practice still, and even though I didn't have a lot of time to do my full thing, at the very least I was able to get on the floor every morning and do a little bit of stretching, and try to just breathe and meditate. And most of the time I just would start crying, because it was, you know, when you're going, you don't feel the emotion, but when you sit still for a minute, then it comes. And I don't like to be upset. I don't like to feel sad. I don't like to deal with any of those messy emotions. But this gave me the space to do that and process it and let it out and cry every day, which is what I needed to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it helped me handle all of that in a lot healthier way than I probably would have had I not had that space to do it in. So,
Yeah.
it definitely became a much,
Grief, just grief in itself is such a um, strange thing. We think about grief and we think, oh, well, we've got these five stages and we're going to just go through it. But that is just not the reality of it. We all process it so differently. We all handle it so differently. The timing of it is so different. And each circumstance is different, because I know we talked a little bit about the circumstances that surrounded that and what you had to deal with even prior to his passing, just things that you were dealing with and caring for him. And then, and then this happening so suddenly, it just is, it's a lot. It's just a lot when you have to go through that. So like I said, when we talked, I can't imagine it. And yet I know people have experienced, like you said, like very, it's just severe. It's a lot. So what did you learn in that process?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so, I definitely learned that, well, I learned that I am in fact strong.
Hmm.
Like I said before, in the early days after the pregnancy, when I had the postpartum depression and everything, and I was upset with myself because I was like, you were supposed to be strong. What happened to you? You fell apart. But through this time, I didn't fall apart. And I think a lot of that was because of all of the practices and all of the things that I had been doing over that time frame to, build myself back up and take care of myself. Uh, but I also learned to reach out and ask for help because, like I said, it was just me doing it, but I had to depend on a lot of my dad's friends, a lot of other people, some of my friends for emotional support. The other thing that I didn't even mention was that just a few weeks after that happened, my husband ended up herniating a disc in his back and couldn't get off the ground and was in horrible pain. And it took us several days to get him medical help because doctors were all screwy and it was just the ER was terrible. And anyway, so he finally ended up having emergency surgery. And so he wasn't able to really be much assistance with anything. And so I was kind of managing the house and doing that as well. And, so I called in his mom to please come and stay with us and that sort of thing, which I don't usually like to ask for help because I'm an independent person. I like to feel like I'm strong and I can handle everything or whatever. But that is really important for people to do whenever, ask for help, ask for somebody to talk to, ask for anything that you need because we're not supposed to do it all by ourselves. You need that support system. And there's
Yeah.
nothing shameful in needing some help.
And we don't. We're, I think we're meant to be connected. We're not meant to do things alone. The saying, it takes a village, is not, it's good that it takes a village because that's how you find the support that you need, So while you do need to have your own internal journey, we also have this connection to the people around us. And it's upbuilding to be able to do that. But it is, like, I understand, so hard to ask for help because it's you feel like it's admitting that you're not capable in some arena. But the truth is that we don't always have to be capable in every arena, and we don't have to handle everything ourselves. It's taken a long time for me to be like, us, I can just delegate it. There are other people that are better at it really than I
Hmm.
am. So
Right, right. Yeah.
so I know when you went through this area of your life, it was something we talked about was reflecting on the fact that you had done, like you said, all of this work over all of this time, that you could actually maybe almost have a little bit of gratitude, not for what happened and the way things happened with your pregnancy, but in the fact that it woke you up to the idea that you needed to go on this journey. You needed to tap into taking care of yourself. You needed to tap into, acceptance and love and for yourself so that you were able to know what that looks like. And that was, like you said, such a big helper when you went through this just last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like we talked about, trying to have gratitude for things. And it's hard to say that you're grateful that something really terrible happened to you, right? But it's to me, it's about looking for the gift in the experience because, and then there's that thing they say, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you, which when you're in it can really piss you off. But it's true in a way. I mean, if we think about life as basically being a series of lessons or experiences that teach us things, and ways that we can grow, if we look at it that way, then yeah, the tough things are going to teach us something. And if we can look back later on, once we're through it, we'll usually see, oh, because that happened, now I have this.
Mm.
And I think it's good to be able to find meaning in those things rather than just looking at, oh, this terrible thing happened and it was really awful, and I hate that that happened to me, you know.
Right. So, kind of moving to into today, you have now turned that into something that you really have a passion to share with others. So I do have your link here in the fortune cookie. So if you guys are looking down in the fortune cookie, um, that is Ashley's link. You can go explore her website and some of the things that she's going to talk about now, because it kind of brings you full circle into how you found your laughter after, right? And that's really what we like to highlight. Like, yes, all of
Yeah.
these things happen, but how do we find the laughter after? So give us what you have on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is happiness consultations, basically, and it's just helping people figure out ways to make their daily lives a little happier. And I came upon this idea because that has been my journey, and it's not so much about being happy, happy, happy all the time, right? Because that's not feasible, and you have to have the balance. You don't. If we were always happy all the time, then we wouldn't really realize it. You have to have that contrast between the regular times and the wonderful times. But it's about being more positive and having a better overall daily life, so that on the bulk of it, on the um, majority of time, you are happy, you're feeling good, you feel fulfilled, you feel like your life is going in the right direction, you feel positive. And I think it's just essential that we prioritize our own happiness. It's something that we're taught really kind of not to do for the most part. A lot of people are told that it's selfish or frivolous to put yourself first or to think about being happy because there's so many other important things to do, and they kind of put everything last on the list as far as that goes. But I think in order for us to truly be our healthiest selves, it's vital that we prioritize our happiness. It's vital for our well-being, for the well-being of people around us. It emotions are contagious, right? If you've ever been around somebody who's really angry or really unhappy, you feel it. And the same works with happiness. If you're around someone who's just loving life and really fun, then you feel that as well, and it lifts your spirits up. And so when we're happy, especially as moms or whatever, you have that ripple effect on everyone around you and you lift them up. And so, it really, not to go ridiculous here, but it affects the whole world. It ripples out, and you make somebody else happy, and then they make somebody else happy, and it's like that old commercial, and so on and so on and so on. And
That
what would the
Fabergé
world look
commercial.
like if everybody was, I know, right? Um, but what would the world look like if everybody was happy? I mean, it would be a
Right.
completely different place.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that has become something that I like to focus on, and and a large part of that is being happy despite what's happening. It's really easy to be happy because something's going well, but in the regular days, if it's a boring day or if it's a not so great day,